All right, let's talk about L'Oreal. It's one of the biggest, most recognizable brands on the entire planet. I mean, the name itself just screams beauty, glamour, and innovation, right?
No, seriously, go look in your bathroom right now. Your shampoo, your makeup, your skincare. I'd bet there's a really, really good chance that L'Oreal is part of your daily routine in some way. They are just everywhere.
But here's the thing. Behind all those glossy ads, behind that famous tagline, "Because you're worth it," there's this hidden history, a story of political extremism and, well, collaboration that the company would probably rather you didn't know about.
So, to really get the full picture here, we first have to wrap our heads around just how enormous L'Oreal is today. We're not exaggerating when we say it's a true global titan.
Just let that number sink in for a second. 88,000 people. That's a workforce bigger than the population of a lot of cities. All of them working for this one company's vision of beauty. It's kind of mind-blowing. And here's what's so wild. You probably use their stuff without even realizing it's all part of the same family. You've got these high-end luxury brands like Lancôme, and then your everyday drugstore staples like Maybelline and Garnier. The reach is just staggering. They've built this massive empire on all these powerful sub-brands.
Okay, but every empire has a founder, right? And to really get to the heart of this story, we've got to go back to the beginning, to the man who started the whole shebang.
So who was this guy? His name was Eugene Schuller, and on the surface, his story sounds like the classic tale of a brilliant, super-driven entrepreneur. I mean, this guy was a genuine innovator. He was a chemist who literally cooked up one of the first safe, synthetic hair dyes in his own kitchen. He founded the company that would later become L'Oreal, and by the 1930s, wow, he wasn't just a chemist anymore, he was a total marketing whiz, building a commercial powerhouse from the ground up.
So, that was his public image. That's the story that's been cemented in the corporate history books. The visionary, the genius, the father of modern beauty. But, and this is a big but, that was only half the story.
All right, now let's get into the messy part. Because while Schuller was busy building this massive beauty empire out in the open, he was also, allegedly, building a very, very different kind of network behind closed doors.
And the contrast here is just jarring. You've got historical sources and investigations alleging that the same brilliant chemist was a major financier of fascism, that the visionary founder was an alleged Nazi collaborator during World War II, that the marketing genius was this intense anti-communist activist with ties to some seriously violent extremist groups.
The main group we're talking about here was called La Cagoule, that translates to the Hood. And listen, this wasn't just some political debate club. This was a secret, violent, terrorist organization. We're talking assassinations, bombings. Their whole goal was to overthrow the French government and install a fascist regime. So according to these historical accounts, Schuller was one of La Cagoule's main backers. The allegations are that he didn't just give them money, which is bad enough, but that he actually let the group use L'Oreal's headquarters for their secret meetings. And then when the Nazis occupied France, the accusations get even more serious, that he actively collaborated with them to protect and grow his business.
Now, you'd think this whole story would just wrap up with the end of the war, right? The Nazis are defeated, France is liberated, but nope, it didn't end there.
Actually, in a lot of ways, the post-war period is where this whole hidden history gets even more complicated and even more tangled up inside the company itself.
So the allegation is that Schuller basically turned L'Oreal into a safe haven for his old political pals. He reportedly hired a ton of former members of La Cagoule and other convicted Nazi sympathizers and didn't just give them jobs, he put them in senior management roles. The most unbelievable example has to be Jacques Carrez. This guy literally served prison time for collaboration, and yet he ended up becoming the chairman of L'Oreal's entire US operation. Just wow.
And this wasn't some accident. Historians who have looked into this suggest it was a deliberate strategy. He was creating a kind of corporate sanctuary for people who were, completely disgraced in post-war France. For a while there, the company's very DNA seems to have been interwoven with this extremist past. So, that all brings us to today. How does a modern, progressive, global powerhouse even begin to reckon with an origin story that is, well, this deeply troubling?
And this right here, this is the core tension of the whole thing. On one hand, you have a company founded by a man with documented ties to fascism. On the other hand, you have the L'Oreal of today, a brand that champions diversity, that is constantly named one of the world's most ethical companies, and is loved by millions. It's this incredible, profound duality.
So, what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, one of the most familiar brands in your home has a past that is, let's just say, anything but beautiful. Second, its founder was a man of intense, deep contradictions. And finally, a story like this really forces us to ask some tough questions. Like, can a company ever truly escape the shadow of the person who created it?
Look, L'Oreal has undeniably transformed itself into a global force for beauty and, in many ways, a force for good. But that history, it's still there. So the final question really is for you to think about. How much should a company's origins, no matter how dark they are, really matter to us today?